shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, the Most High said to Moses in Exodus 6:1. For with a strong hand he will let them go, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his land. In the 7th session of the series, Remembering the First Exodus, we will take a look back in time to reflect on the deliverance of the children of Israel out of bondage. Just like Pharaoh, the nations that enslaved the people of the Most High hold themselves blameless for their mistreatment of the chosen people. They refuse to repent or pay reparations. But the plagues will get their attention.
Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old King Pharaoh to let my people go.
Historians say that the composer of the well-known song Go Down Moses is unknown. It is considered to be the first spiritual to be written down. For enslaved African Americans, the story was very powerful because they could relate to the experiences of Moses and the Israelites. So I thought the song would be very appropriate for this lesson as we begin talking about the plagues of Egypt. So I took a page from Maria's playbook and asked Mom to sing a snippet of the song. The question that comes to mind is, why did this song resonate so strongly with our people? Listen to an excerpt from this article entitled Go Down Moses from Pitt.edu. It says the text was originally published in a northern abolitionist newspaper, and this newspaper was called the National Anti-Slavery Standard in 1861. As the Contraband's Freedom Hymn, though it was composed and sung long before Reverend Lewis C. Lockwood, a YMCA employee and missionary who was among the first Northerners to have contact with former Southern slaves. So he documented the song and sent the text to the New York Tribune. These slaves were referred to as contraband because during the Civil War, the North refused to return them to their owners, claiming them as contraband of war. Let My People Go appeared as sheet music the following year. Slaves identified with Israel in bondage. They saw the master class as Pharaoh, the South as Egypt, and their own leaders, like the insurrectionist Nat Turner, as Moses. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that one of our ancestors composed this song. For those who doubt it, my question would be, why would Europeans see a need to identify with slavery? They were the enslavers, a point they would like to forget. So as we continue with this series, it's time to take a look at the plagues that forced Pharaoh to let the people of Yah go as we prepare for the second Exodus. So we will begin reading in Exodus 7:1 through 13, where the Most High tells Moses that he has made him to be as God to Pharaoh. Don't miss that point. It's very important for us to understand what's being said here. Moses was to be as God to Pharaoh. And Aaron, your brother, shall be your prophet. Let's make sure we understand this role because we normally think of Aaron as priest, not prophet. Let's look at Strong's 4396 to see how this word is defined. It says prophetess, a prophet which is an interpreter or foreteller of the divine will. It says a prophet declares the mind or message of Yah, which sometimes predicts the future, as in foretelling, and more commonly speaks forth his message. So in that verse, it said Aaron would be Moses's prophet. So he would be speaking forth the message that Moses gave to him for a particular situation. It goes on to say a prophet is someone inspired by Yah to foretell or tell forth the word of Yah. Let's go back to the passage and look at this again. Aaron, your brother, shall be your prophet, Moses' prophet. So you shall speak all that I command you, and Aaron your brother shall tell Pharaoh to send the children of Israel out of his land. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh will not heed you, so that I may lay my hand on Egypt and bring, listen, my armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. So the Most High was doing this so that the Egyptians would know that he was the Almighty. Then Moses and Aaron did so just as the Most High had commanded them, so they did. And Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. So the Most High spoke to Moses and Aaron again, saying, when Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, show a miracle for yourselves, then you shall say to Aaron, take your rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and let it become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went in to Pharaoh, and they did these things, just as the Most High had commanded them. And then Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before Pharaoh's servants, and it became a serpent. Verse 11, but Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers. So the magicians of Egypt, they also did like manner with their enchantments. So Pharaoh's like, this is no big deal. So he calls in his wise men and his sorcerers, and the magicians of Egypt did the same thing. They used enchantments. They all threw down their rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. And Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them, just as the Most High had already said. But isn't it interesting that the first sign in the sight of Pharaoh was to turn the rod into a serpent? If you remember, it was also the first sign given to Moses. Let's dig a little deeper to see the significance of the serpent in Egypt. All right, let's read some of this. It says Egyptian uraeus, definition, symbol, and meaning. Ancient Egyptians combined religion, mythology, and government in their pharaohs, often incorporating divine symbols in their leaders' garb. So that snake on the pharaoh's crown, it's called a uraeus, and it's an ancient Egyptian symbol of a reared snake, typically a cobra, and it was attached to the very front of the pharaoh's crown. So why do they wear this? So it says, in Egyptian art, the cobra often represented the goddess Wadjet, and it was a protective deity and daughter of the sun god. So her job was to help protect Egypt and the cosmos from chaos. So it says this Wadjet was one of the oldest deities in the Egyptian pantheon, worshipped from the earliest evidence of Egyptian civilization and presumably even before that. In fact, her cult actually predates unified Egypt itself. Wadjet was specifically the protective deity of Lower Egypt, the kingdom based around the Nile Delta. So the Most High goes after their symbol of protection first. Let's keep going. It's worth noting that serpent is a biblical catch-all term that includes both snakes and dragons. So let's look at an excerpt from this article from Sacred Text entitled Serpent Worship in Africa. It says, so we're talking about Egypt. It says, of all the nations of antiquity, none was so infamous for idolatry as Egypt. She was the alma mater of every superstition, conveying with her colonists, wherever they were settled, some corruption of the truth, which under the fostering care of her established priesthood assumed a form of consistency and allurement. Among the rest, the worship of the serpent was in her early history an important and conspicuous part of her idolatry. The serpent entered into the Egyptian religion under all his characters of an emblem of divinity, a charm, an oracle, and a god. As an emblem of divinity, the sacred serpent was particularly symbolical of the gods Niph and Thoth and the goddess Isis, though he entered more or less into the symbolical worship of all the gods. So Harpocrates, a very ancient god of the Egyptians, was symbolized by the serpent. He is generally represented with his left hand on a staff, surmounted by a cornucopia. Round the staff is twined a serpent. He is the god of silence, to denote which the forefinger of the right hand is on his mouth. He is supposed by some to be the same as Horus. So we're understanding why this was the first thing that the Most High dealt with when he brought judgment on this land. Let's go on. Now let's look at Strong's 8577 and get the meaning of this word. It says tannin, which is a serpent, a dragon, or a sea monster. So who are we talking about here? Pagans used serpents and images of them to represent Satan or Hasatan. Let's look at this from Genesis 3:1, where it says the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field. He's talking to Eve, and he asked if the Most High had indeed said that they were not to eat of every tree. Now, my daughter often asks the question, why do we read this without being amazed that this serpent is talking to her? That's another lesson. Let's keep going. Let's read this from Revelation 21-3. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. He laid hold of the dragon, that serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal on him, so that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things he must be released for a little while. Let's look at a few more things before we go back to the story. This is from National Library of Medicine, entitled The Rod and the Serpent, History's Ultimate Healing Symbol. Healing symbol? It says the snake has served as a medical emblem for more than 2,400 years, since its association with the ancient Greek god of medicine and healing, Asclepius, in the 4th century BC. Its symbolic background can be traced further back to the worship of gods of earth's blossom in ancient Egypt and earth-related deities in the archaic period of Greek antiquity. It is featured entwined around a staff of knowledge and wisdom. And where is this taking us back to? This event with Eve in the garden. Let's go over that again. It is featured entwined around a staff or a tree of knowledge and wisdom in most anaglyphs depicting Asclepius. The snake was impressed in the Old and the New Testament as well as in the Christian tradition as a symbol of sin, rejuvenation, death, resurrection, asthenia, and therapy. It is postulated that the double snake motif was reintroduced by Renaissance philosophers as a medical emblem due to the symbolic connections of Hermes with deliverance and redemption. However, its use during the last 2 centuries seemed to lack substantial historical background. The historical, mythological, and traditional retrospection of the snake's symbolism validates its appropriateness in the health care field. I'm going to read just a tiny portion of this from Armstrong Institute of Medical Archaeology entitled, "Does the Serpentine Symbol of Healing Have a Biblical Origin?" It says it's one of the most widely recognized universal symbols of medicine and healthcare. It's used around the world by countless medical outlets and notably features front and center on the flag of the United Nations World Health Organization. Are you starting to see that there's more to this than meets the eye? Listen to this clip from Professor Walter Weiss.
The Roman bath, England, notice the serpent symbol. The serpent is the life giver. You find it in Egypt, you find it in Hinduism, everywhere you find the serpent. It is the most prominent symbol. There you have the Hydra. You find it everywhere. Would you find it in Catholicism? Of course. Here's a modern cathedral with a serpent, and the main crest of the Vatican has the dragon serpent on it. And the dragon on the papal crest in the Vatican Museum, Vatis means the diviner, Khan is the serpent. Vatican means the divining serpent. Dragon worship, that's what it is. The Bible says the dragon gave him his seat and power and great authority. There's the same symbol as was used for pagan Rome, because the Vatican has taken the seat of Caesar. It's one and the same thing. So there's the ancient symbol of the dragon on a Roman bridge. The Vatican has just taken it over. The greatest serpents in the world you will find on Bernini's canopy in Rome. It's interesting that St. Paul's Cathedral, which was a Protestant cathedral, has been totally rebuilt and now has a duplicate of Bernini.
Now let's pick up where we left off in this story. Aaron has thrown down his rod and it became a serpent. So Pharaoh called in his wise men and sorcerers, and they did the same thing through enchantment, witchcraft. So we see the power of darkness at work here. We also see it in these last days being manifested through science and technology. But here's the point we can't miss. Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. Whose power is greater? We will have to keep reminding ourselves of this in these last days. The Most High's power is greater. He is the Almighty. Now, we see here in Exodus 7:14 through 25 that the first plague begins when the Most High told Moses that Pharaoh's heart was hard. So he told Moses to go to Pharaoh the next morning when he goes out to the water. And he told Moses to stand by the water with his rod in his hand and then tell Pharaoh that the Most High, the God of the Hebrews, sent him and wants him to let his people go so they could serve him in the wilderness. He also told Moses to tell Pharaoh that he was going to strike the waters with the rod and the waters would turn to blood. So Moses spoke to Aaron and gave him the words, and the water turned to blood. And what did the Most High say would happen? And the fish that are in the river shall die. The river shall stink, and the Egyptians will loathe to drink the water of the river. Now, Aaron did this. It happened in the sight of Pharaoh. He saw the rivers turn to blood, and everything that the Most High had spoken through Moses happened. The fish that were in the river died, the river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink the water. So there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. But notice now verse 22. The magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. In other words, they did the same thing. They turned water to blood through witchcraft. So Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he didn't listen to Aaron or Moses. But notice this. They did the same thing as in turning the water to blood, but they couldn't reverse it. They could not turn it back to water. So it says 7 days passed after Yah struck the river. Now, as the passage said, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, so he didn't let the people go. And you can imagine he probably got a little cocky when he saw that his magicians could do the same thing that Aaron and Moses had done. So the Most High spoke to Moses again and sent him back to Pharaoh. And this time he says, I will smite all your territory with frogs. So the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, into your bedroom, on your bed, into the houses of your servants, on your people, into your ovens, and into your kneading bowls. And the frogs shall come upon you, as in come upon you, Pharaoh, on your people and all your servants. So the Most High then gives this word to Moses and tells him to say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your rod over the streams, over the rivers and over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up on the land of Egypt. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. And listen, the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs on the land of Egypt. Why frogs? Look at what we have here. It's the Egyptian goddess called Heket, the toad goddess of birth. So it says Heket was a goddess of childbirth and fertility in ancient Egypt. She was depicted as a frog or a woman with the head of a frog. The meaning of her name is not certain, but possibly derived from the word Hekah, meaning ruler or scepter. Frogs symbolize fruitfulness and new life, and it is thought that her priestesses were trained midwives. Now let's go back to the story. Remember that the magicians were able to bring forth frogs, but guess what? They couldn't get rid of them. So Pharaoh had to call for Moses and ask him to plead with Yah on their behalf to take away the frogs. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat, as in please, beg your God for us, that he will take away these frogs from me and my people. And listen to what he says. And I will let the people go so that they can sacrifice to him. Now we know he's lying. But do you see what's happening here? Some would say it's like a chess game. I'm going to do this to you, Pharaoh, if you don't let my people go. He does it. And then it's like, okay, your move. And in each situation, Pharaoh will have to come begging because his magicians won't be able to undo what was done. In the meantime, the plagues are destroying their economy and their way of life. Let's go on. So Moses says to Pharaoh, accept the honor of saying, when I shall intercede for you, for your servants, and for your people, to destroy the frogs from you and your houses, that they may remain in the river only. And he said, tomorrow. So he says, let it be according to your word. And he's telling Pharaoh, I'm doing this so that you will know that there is no one like our Most High. And he says, and the frogs shall depart from you, from your houses, from your servants, and from your people. They shall remain in the river only. So Moses and Aaron, they went out from Pharaoh, and he pleads to the Most High on their behalf. And the Most High did according to his word, and the frogs died. So they had to gather all these frogs together in heaps and piles, and it says the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart again, and he did not let the people go. Let's go on. Continuing on in Exodus 8:16 through 19, because Pharaoh reneged on his word, the Most High told Moses to tell Aaron to stretch out his rod and strike the dust of the land. So Aaron did so. He stretched out his hand with his rod and struck the dust of the earth, and it became lice on man and beast. Listen to this. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. Can you imagine? But notice now, something interesting is going to happen because the Most High didn't announce this one first. And we're going to see here in verse 18, now the magicians so worked with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice on men and beasts. Then the magician said to Pharaoh, listen, the magicians are now saying, we can't do this. This is the finger of Yah. But Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them, just like the Most High had said. Let's keep going. Now notice Pharaoh didn't ask Moses to take away the lice. But the Most High sent Moses back. He said, rise early in the morning and stand before him as he comes out to the water. And you tell him once again to let the people go. But if you refuse, swarms of flies will come upon you and your servants, on your people, and into your houses. He's saying the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground on which they stand. But something interesting happens here. The Most High makes a distinction so that none of the flies would be in Goshen. He says, in that day I will set apart the land of Goshen in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there. And he's telling him, I'm doing this so that you will know that I am the Almighty Yah in the midst of the land. He says, I will make a difference between my people and your people. So we have to ask if our people had to deal with the previous plagues as well. So, true to his word, The thick swarms of flies came into the house of Pharaoh, into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. It says the land was corrupted because of the swarms of flies. Now this one also got Pharaoh's attention, and he calls for Moses and Aaron again. And he's telling them this time, yeah, you can go and sacrifice to your God, but do it here in Egypt. So Moses says to him, no, it's not right for us to do that, because we would be sacrificing the abomination of the Egyptians to our God. And if we do that, if we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, these Egyptians will stone us. So no, we need to go 3 days journey into the wilderness, and there we can sacrifice to the Most High as he will command us. So Pharaoh says, okay, I'll let you go, that you can go and do the sacrifice, but don't go very far away, and pray for me while you're at it. So Moses says to him, indeed, I am going out from you. And he's telling him, okay, I am going to pray to the Most High that the swarms of flies may leave tomorrow from you, from your servants, from your people, etc. But don't be deceitful anymore in not letting the people go, like you said. So Moses went out from Pharaoh. He prayed. The Most High listened to him and removed the swarms of flies. Now, it says not one fly remained, but Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also, and neither would he let the people go. Once more, we have another plague. The Most High sends Moses back to him and tells him, let the people go, or he was going to strike the cattle in the field, the horses, donkeys, camels, oxen, and sheep, with a severe pestilence. And once again he tells Pharaoh that he was going to make a difference between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt. And this is what we're going to see happen, family. Abba Yah is going to make a distinction so that these nations will stop pretending that they don't know who we are. He told Pharaoh that nothing would die that belonged to the children of Israel. He said it and he did it. The next day all of the livestock died, but of the livestock of the children of Israel, it said not one of them died. Do you see how the Most High is proving his word to be true as he demonstrates his power and might before the Egyptians? But the heart of Pharaoh became hard, and he did not let the people go. Now he tells Moses and Aaron to take handfuls of ashes from a furnace, and then Moses was supposed to scatter it toward the heavens in the sight of Pharaoh. He wanted Pharaoh to see him doing this. Then this ash was going to become fine dust in the land of Egypt, all Egypt it said, and it would cause boils that would break out in sores on man and beast throughout Egypt. Now he's touching their flesh. So Moses did it, and look at what happened here. It says, and the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils. For the boils were on the magicians and all the Egyptians. The Most High is like, you want to play? Let's do this. So he hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he could unleash all of the judgments he had planned against them. Now we're at the 7th plague, and here Moses is told to rise early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh and once again tell him the God of the Hebrews said to let his people go so that they could serve him. And he says, for at this time I will send all my plagues to your very heart, and on your servants and on your people, that you may know that there is none like me. In other words, he's like, you don't know who you're messing with. Let me show you who I am. He said, if I had stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, then you would have been cut off from the earth. But indeed, for this purpose I have raised you up. In other words, you didn't even get to where you are by yourself. I put you there, that I may show my power in you, and that my name may be declared in all the earth. As yet, you exalt yourself against my people, in that you will not let them go. So guess what? Tomorrow at this time, I will cause very heavy hail to rain down, such as has not been in Egypt since its founding until now. Therefore, look, he's going to warn them. Listen to this. It's like, listen to what he says. Send now and gather your livestock and all that you have, whatever was left, in the field. For the hail shall come down on every man and every animal which is found where? In the field, and is not brought home, and they shall die. You all, the Most High is like, let me show you who you're messing with. It says, listen, he who feared the word of Yah among the servants of Pharaoh made his servants and his livestock flee to the houses. But he who did not regard the word of Yah left his servants and his livestock in the field. Let's see what happened to them. So Moses was commanded to stretch out his hand toward heaven so that the hail would come. And after he did that, the thunder and hail came, but something else happened. The Most High sent fire mixed in with the hail. What a sight that must have been. It says the hail struck throughout the whole land of Egypt and all that was in the field, both man and beast. The hail struck every herb of the field and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, there was no hail. Do you think that got Pharaoh's attention? Absolutely. Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron. And he says something here for the first time. I have sinned. I have sinned this time, you think? So now he's saying, the Most High is righteous, and my people and I are wicked. Yes. So now he's telling Moses to plead on his behalf once again that there would be no more thundering and hail. He's saying, it's enough. I've had enough. I'll let you go, and you don't have to stay any longer. Let's see what happens next. Moses agreed again and told him that as soon as he gets out of the city, he would plead to Yah on his behalf, and the thunder would cease and there would be no more hail. Then he tells Pharaoh, you're going to know that this earth belongs to Yah. And he also says to him, but as for you and your servants, I know that you will not yet fear the Most High. It says, now the flax and the barley were struck, for the barley was in the head and the flax was in bud. But the wheat and the spelt were not struck, for they are late crops. So it happened, just like Moses said, as soon as it stopped, Pharaoh hardened his heart. It says, he and his servants. It says, he sinned yet more, and he hardened his heart, he and his servants. Now, think about this. You would think that after 400 years, this nation would come to its senses and say, you know what? What we did to those people who didn't ask to come here was wrong. We need to acknowledge that. We need to acknowledge that we treated them harshly and at least offer a national apology. Instead, what do you see? We don't want to remember what happened, so let's fix it so that it will be removed from the history books and just tell them to forget about it and move on. But Yah didn't forget. Let's keep going. Once again, Moses is told to go in to see Pharaoh, and then the Most High says this to him, I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his servants. And he tells him why. That I may show these signs of mine before him. And you may tell, this is the second reason. This is for us, so listen. That you may tell in the hearing of your son and your son's son the mighty things I have done in Egypt. We were supposed to remember this. He says, and my signs which I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Almighty. I am the Most High Yah. So Moses and Aaron, they go in again to see him, and they're saying to him, you know, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before the Most High? These are the things that the Most High told them to say to Pharaoh. He's saying again, let the people go that they may serve me, or else. Seemed like Pharaoh would be shaking in his boots at this point. He says, if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will bring locusts into your territory, and they will cover the face of the earth so that no one will be able to see the earth, and they'll eat the residue of what is left, which remains to you from the hail. And they shall eat every tree which grows up for you out of the field. They shall fill your houses, the houses of all your servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen since the day that they were on the earth to this day. And Moses turned and he left. So I will end it here and cover the remaining plagues in the next session. We're going to see how the Most High destroyed this once thriving and prosperous nation for what they did to his people. Israel was made to serve in a land where they had been a blessing. The seed of Jacob had blessed Egypt. The Most High used Joseph to save the Egyptians, and in the process saved Israel. So these Egyptians knew that there was something unique about the people they held in captivity. This is what prompted them to enslave them. They wanted to continue receiving from them and not pay them. They wanted to own them and exploit their gifts and talents. How can we not see the similarities to our situation here? But just like our ancestors were delivered with a mighty hand, the Most High will do it again. He will bring these nations to their knees. And yes, the plagues will help to get their attention. So be sure to hit the like, share this message, and join me next time. Shalom, everyone.